Hi, and welcome once again to Ava's Alterations. If you do like them, go ahead and click on the subscribe button and check the bell to get your notifications for when I do upload new videos. I'm going to try really hard to upload a new video at least once a week. I'm really new at this whole editing thing, so please bear with me. But for now, let's go ahead and get sewing. So first thing we're going to do today is we are hemming a black pair of pants, and these have a 3.25 inch hem. You can see where they've been pinned. So first thing we do, we measure the hem. You can see that there's also an inch of seam allowance right there. So you want to make sure that when you're cutting and measuring for to do this hem, that you're going to want to take an inch off that. So instead of it being 3.25 inches, we're going to be measuring it 2.25 inches, so we have that 1 inch hem allowance left. I like to mark it with white chalk. I have white, yellow, blue, red. The chalk that I use brushes off very easily, so here I'm lining them up. And what I do, instead of chalk marking each one individually to begin with, I just line them up and cut them at the 2.5 inch mark. You'll see that I'm very meticulous about making sure that they're lined up perfectly. Oh my goodness, I never realized how terrible my fingernails look. Oh no. Yeah, so we're just going to go ahead and get that lined up real nicely. And I believe I mark it here. 2.25 inch. Yep. And you can see I'm using the red chalk there. I think I switched to white later. Sometimes I'll mark both pairs of pants because that way I have I get all my marking done at one time. So if I get the marking all done at one time, and you can see that it's in a real nice straight line there, then I won't have to go back and remark it for where the hem has to be folded afterwards. So I'm going to go ahead and once again make sure it's super lined up, almost as precise as you can possibly get it. And then we'll go ahead and cut. If cutting 2 layers makes you uncomfortable, then by all means go ahead and mark both legs, and then cut them one at a time. I've just been doing this for a long enough time that I don't really need to do that. Although I will say when I cut blue jeans, because they're so thick, I don't want that material to move, so I do turn around and cut those legs one at a time. Cutting, 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 cutting. Alright, there we go. So now I've cut off my 2.25 inch off of the original legs. And then what we're going to do is I'm marking the 1 inch up, because now I need a 1 inch hem line, seam. Can you tell I've never done this before? At least I've never done the voiceover before. I promise they'll get better. They will. They'll get better. So what I'm using there, now you see I've switched. Now we're going to serge those edges. And when you serge, make sure that that original seam is facing the right direction, because if pant seams end up facing the wrong direction, they get really uncomfortable, and they're also difficult to turn over. So when you're serging, and you'll see that I do this here real soon coming up, go ahead and just take that extra time to make sure that that seam is facing the right direction. So then I go ahead and I serge both of the legs. Serge and cut and serge and cut. My serger actually gave out on me right after this video was made. So I think I broke the loopers. I'm going to have to go get it taken care of. Alright. Then I come back and I press the edge that was just serged, because sometimes they flutter, they ruffle on you. You get that lettuce edge look to them. You don't really want that, especially when you're trying to get a near perfect seam. So you'll see that I am folding it and pinning it right where those chalk marks were made. And I did serge both legs. I just skipped that part so that you didn't have to sit there and watch me do 2 sergings of the exact same thing. Yeah, it's... Now the reason, if you'll notice, I just did that. I pinned one on one side of the hem at the seam line, one pin on the other side of the seam line, and then I'm carefully working my fingers with that chalk mark so that it gets pinned exactly where the hemline's supposed to be. And I only pin it in 4 spots, the 2 seams and then the 2 opposite edges. 4 pins, and that's all. And then I'll go through and I will press that. Now these are a type of polyester pants, and I have my iron is turned all the way up, but caveat, there's a Teflon shoe on my iron so that it doesn't matter how hot I make it, it's not going to burn anything. Thank God, I went through that once. Here I'm checking to make sure that we have exactly 1 inch from the hemline. You know, it's always good to check. You don't want to have to tear this stuff out once you've already done all the work. And then we start sewing. You'll see I have a single needle. This is a single universal needle. And I'm horrible at this, but I do tend to sew right over my needles. Either you go really fast over your needles or you go really slow over your needles, but you can't go medium. That's how that one works out. And then I think I realized that I had blue thread, navy thread on the top and then a black thread on the bottom, so I had to go ahead and turn my material over so that it would all work out. Basically, I serge with black thread if it's really dark material, I serge with white thread if it's a light material, and everything in between, you know, I do what I can, but that's about it. So here is our finished product. And it's already pressed, so you don't have to worry about repressing it. There's the back serged edge, and of course clip all of your threads. There's your front sewn edge. Now, second pair of pants that I'm showing you is how to hem with a knit or stretch pants. And there's a little bit of a difference in the way that I do this. See, there I went, turning over that seam to make sure that it was lying flat. Most of the time what I do, I'll cut it off after I've gone ahead and measured everything, serge it, and here's where that ruffled edge comes in. Again, I would press it. In fact, I suggest that you press it. You can't just hem these knits like this. You got to use this tape. This is called Wonder Tape. It's amazing stuff. You can get it at your local store. I get it at wawek.com. And you can also pick it up at Joann's, although I have gotten a couple of bad batches from Joann's, so you're kind of iffy on that one. So basically what I'm doing is I'm putting the Wonder Tape all along the serged edge of this knit pant. Now this is just for knit pants. This is the only time you really have to do this is on those knit pants. Because otherwise what will happen is your machine will eat the knit. Don't ask me why. It just does. It's got something to do with the stretch. You want to make sure that you're using a good stretch needle, and I like to press the tape with a hot iron. It kind of helps it bond to the material better. This stuff's wonderful. I use it for everything from zippers to hems, and it makes the hems turn out so beautiful. It looks like you have a cover stitch machine when you in all reality don't, and it does wash out. So when you wash your pants, the hem is there, it's nice, and you don't have this tape at the bottom. So you'll see I just do a little bit at a time. You can't really lay it all down because sometimes it lifts up if you don't press it right away. It's like the heat helps to bond it to the material. You can see my hand while I'm just pressing it down while it's still hot. This is weird. I've never done voiceovers before. This is kind of fun. Maybe I should do this more often. I'm talking to myself. My whole family probably thinks I'm nuts. All right, so when I get to the end of it, I use scissors and I cut it off. The first edge you can see I pulled off, and that does leave just enough left that you can peel up the tape. It's like a double-sided sticky tape. And then after I'm done with that, then I peel that up slowly and turn it over. You'll see I've got my measuring tape there. So again, we're measuring it up. I believe it was 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch, I think. You can see where I've got the chalk, the original hem chalk line that I used. And there you go. Again, folding and pressing and folding and pressing. The best way to get a real professional looking hem is to just make sure that you've got it marked properly and that you fold it and press it. This tape is amazing. And then, here we go, peeling off the white part, folding it up, and a little bit of measuring. Oh no, I'm kind of out of the shot. You can barely see it up in that corner, but it is there. It is there. I'm doing exactly what I said. You can see I'm measuring it. Here we go. Pull the tape off. Measure and press down. And then I'll go ahead and press these pants, I think, one more time before I sew it. And that's really, like I said, to get a really professional, crisp line for your hem. That's what you're always looking for. This tape is wonderful. I use it on everything. I use it for zippers because you know how sometimes your zippers will move when you're trying to sew them and it gets really, really frustrating. Maybe not if you're sewing them into your garments that you're making off a pattern, but if you're doing any alterations or replacing a zipper, this tape comes in so handy. It's good stuff. Yeah, I use it for just about everything. And I've been sewing for a really long time, so I just came across it, I want to say maybe 6-7 months ago, and before that it was really difficult to get these hems beautiful, especially with the knits. Knits are really hard to get beautiful hems if you don't have the right stuff. This does the trick. You could always use another type of fusing. I mean, the general idea is it's something that fuses the material together. Okay, so here you can see I'm going to press it again. I'm straightening it out. Making sure that everything is stuck really nicely, and as it cools, it dries, it's stuck to the material. Oh my goodness. Hey, wake up. I'm sorry, it's 9:30 at night and I'm usually in bed by now. Call me an old lady. I feel kind of old, but I have been getting up to go to the gym every morning, so I guess we'll find out. So now I'm just going to go ahead and rethread my machine. I had to change it from a blue thread to the black thread. You can see I have this automatic needle threader, but then I had to take the needle out and pull out my twin stretch needle, and I specifically ordered this one because it was a 4.0. They come in all sizes from a 2mm to a 4mm, and the 4mm gives you more of that look that you get from the ready-made, ready-to-wear clothing. So if you've never used a double needle before, absolutely play with it. They are tons of fun and they look really great if you use the tape technique that I'm showing you today. Because otherwise what will happen is that no matter how nice you do it, oh, and another thing, squirrel, when you are using this, you want to loosen your tension on both spools of thread, because the bottom bobbin actually weaves back and forth in a zigzag, say that 6 times fast, a zigzag pattern. And while it's doing that, if you've got it too tight, what it'll do is it'll actually pull the material up in between the two needles. Now, when you sew with a twin needle like this, also, you have to sew it right side up. I know a lot of people who sew like to sew with the wrong side up, because then you can see what you're sewing when you're hemming. But with this one, you've got to know how much of a hem that you're putting on, and then make sure you keep a measurement. You can even get one of those metal seam guides that are magnetic. They're really handy, and if I could have found mine, I would have showed it to you, but maybe next time, huh? A lot of threading, because I have 2 spools on this, and so to get the double spool, it takes an extra minute. And it's funny because actually I have the one thing of thread is looped over my lamp to give it the proper tension. Okay, so now I'm getting ready to go ahead and put the material underneath the foot, and we're going to start sewing. And I don't sew terribly quickly with this technique. You see I'm measuring there. Make sure I've got my 1 inch. So I know that that number 2 is actually 3/4 of an inch, and it's the mark right after the number 2 is my 1 inch, but I want to sew it at 3/4 of an inch because of the 4mm needle. So it catches both the top and the bottom. And then we stitch it up. Oh. I have got to change that nail polish. My goodness, that looks horrible. What a thing to think of. So here we're stitching. I'm just going to stitch it up for you. And then if you know how to stitch, if you stitch too fast, you'll lose control. If you stitch slow enough, then you'll be able to have these beautiful parallel lines that are exactly 1 inch from the bottom, and it looks very similar, if not almost identical, to the original hem that was made by the cover stitch machine. So when you get to the very end of it, make sure that you line it up real nice. Here we go. Almost finished now. You can just see the ends of the thread right there. And I like to pull the thread actually down towards the bottom because I feel like that locks it in for some reason. You don't have to. I just find that I usually do. I'm lifting up my presser foot, and then I'll show you the finished product. Thank you so much for joining me today as I stitched these 2 different hems. I hope you liked the video, and we'll see you again next time.